What's up, everybody? I'm here with my friend Neal Conlon. It is such a pleasure to have you on, my man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man.
Tell the world about yourself.
Ooh, big question. I'll do the condensed version versus what we did before, and then we can dig into whatever you want, right?
Absolutely.
So if I was going to sum up in one sentence, the one thing I've become really good at, it's change. Like, really, how do you change something? That could be changing a job, changing your mindset, changing your wealth, your story around money, whatever those things are. And how I got good at that is over the past 15-ish years, in my own kind of quest to understand really what I wanted in this life, or now what I call a lifestyle by design, I've had to go through those kind of transitions and transformations myself and been like, yeah, this thing that I think I wanted, I got it. Turns out I didn't want that thing. So how do I edit that? And so so it's growing up in New York City around this really ethnically diverse center of the country. My mom had me at a very young age. You know, she was 16, had really great grandparents who created a foundation for me, and then went off to the Marine Corps for a bunch of years, did a cool bunch of Marine Corps stuff. We could talk about that if you want. Jumped into the corporate world, hedge funds, financial services, commercial real estate, learned a lot about business modeling and how organizational structures work, and then jumped down into the tech startup world, raised a bunch of capital, built a company, sold a company, took a company public on the stock exchange, and then ultimately raised $100 million for my big last company. And when I got to the end of that one, realized like what was the thing that made that really work so well in the last big company. And it was the coaches that I had, because the company had coaches. And I was like, you know what? I really want to help people understand how hard change is, but give people permission to be okay to change when things are not working for them. And so over the past 5 years, have built a coaching business. We run coaching events all over the country. We do 4 or 5 events a year, different themes and stuff like that. And just having a good time, enjoying life and doing awesome things with awesome people.
I love it, man. There's a lot to unpack there, and change being the most significant there, right? So you grew up, single mom. She was single, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Had you at 16.
Yep.
Your grandparents raised you. What was your thoughts? What you were going to do through those teenage years? You went into the Marine Corps. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate
Veterans,
that.
baby. Let's go. But you said you did a lot of cool Marine stuff. What did that look like? When were you in? How long did you serve? And what were your plans with the military?
Yeah, it's interesting. The one thing you said, like, what were your plans? And the one thing that my grandparents all instilled in me, right? All 3 out of 4 of them were immigrants. And they had this like salt of the earth kind of immigrant, like this is the best country, American story. It's all there for you. And so this one message keeps on coming up for me, is that my grandparents always said to me, you can be anything that you want to be, right? Which is an immigrant kind of message, right? They never said I had to play by the rules. They never said you had to get certified. They never said any of those things. It was always like you can be whatever you want to be. And that stuck somewhere, to be like, whenever there was a hard choice to make, it was like, I'm going to do that because I think I can do it. It was never, do I even have the credentials or the expertise or the background or certifications for it?
Right. Am I qualified for this?
Right, exactly, right? Because what immigrant is qualified to come to the country, right? And in America, something we devalue is that, like, America makes you no promises to it, other than the fact that when you're born here, you are privileged to have all this opportunity in front of you, and it's up to you to do something, to choose to succeed and thrive with that, or don't complain about it.
I see that a lot in society, and I think it's just it's probably been always the same demographic or percentage of people that say, oh, I can't do it. we've just grown in population where it's probably the same percentage, where we have immigrants that come in that say, hey, I'm going to make the best opportunity that I have here because I didn't have that before. And when we look at America as a whole, we are so blessed, so fortunate to have the freedoms to open business, to do what we want, get qualified if you need to be qualified for a certain position or whatever that looks like. But you also don't need to maybe have that qualification, just strong work ethic.
Yep.
Right? You said salt of the earth, man. That's we don't see that often these days.
Well, so over the past 15 years of making my own changes, the lens that I have and the skills that I've adopted would be very hard to replicate because most people wouldn't choose that path. And I think that's the big thing is we live in the world, the United States, where for the most part, most people who are born here, you at this point, you will go through your entire life at some age bracket and some demographic and some earning bracket, but the path is laid out for you 100%. You will get health insurance in some way, shape, or form. You will get a job in some way, shape, or form. You will get a roof over your head in some way, shape, or form. You will get food, water, clothing in some way. None of that has to be figured out for us. And yet, we live in a society where there is a select small group of people, we call them entrepreneurs, who go, that path is not good enough for me, and I want more. And we're going to literally go off the path, and we're going to fight, steal, beg, learn, hack, make deals, partnerships, whatever it is. And you're literally cutting your own path. And from one entrepreneur to another entrepreneur, you're still going to cut your own path versus decide to stay on the path that was laid out for you clearly based on what the country already gives to you. And so it's interesting because in that majority, there's a phrase or a quote I've heard before where it's like out of 100 people, 90 people will wish they could be warriors. 10 people will think they're warriors. And then one person will be the actual warrior who's doing all the things. And I think that's in today's world, the warrior is the entrepreneur who's actively doing all these things and going like, all right, what tools do I have? How do I get what I want? What do I really want? And then how do I get that? And I think for me, for a bunch of years, I was like, I think I want to be a Marine. I want to have this level of service and be a patriot. And I literally went to the recruiter and was like, I want to jump out of an airplane and shoot things. What do you got for me? And he was like, oh, we got you.
That's the ticket. You said the right words. You're in.
You're in, right? And so that's what I did for a bunch of years. And then when I mastered like what it was to be a Marine, I was like, I don't think there's anything else here for me. I want to understand more. And so that let me out into the corporate world. And then I spent, 8-10 years in the corporate world doing really cool corporate things. But then I was like, I don't think it's what I really want to do my whole life. And then that led me out into like the world of startups and then being like, this kind of feels really cool because you got a lot more control over your own success. Like you get the right team of people together, you start raising capital, you have control over your freedom even. And then it was like, well, I've done all these things, but now I want to be fully in control of like all the things. And then that becomes this whole scary evolution. I think that's what happens for a lot of us is like you jump out into the world and you're like, wait a minute, there's no scaffolding, no company logo, no cubicle, no nothing. And you're like, wait, I'm in full control. I make all my own choices. Mm-hmm. Fuck.
Yeah. No time clock to punch in.
Yeah.
Right? Nobody telling you got to be here. Only you. So how did you fall into this world of entrepreneurship?
It actually was by accident actually. So I was the number 4 at a company in 2011, like the 4th person down. Had no equity in the company, just an employee of this data services company because I was doing a bunch of data work, and the company actually had gotten into Inc. magazine, Inc. 5000, right, which is a big entrepreneur group, big magazine that they do for entrepreneurs. And it was funny because the number 1 of the company was an introvert person the CEO, and he was like, I don't want to do any of this stuff. Number two in the company had like 6 kids, and he was like, I can't do this. And then number 3 in the company was a guy that was like, didn't want to be the face of anything. It wasn't his thing. And so they literally pulled me into a room and they were like, Neal, we want you to be the face of the company. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not an equity. He's like, here's 1% of the company. You're now an equity person, and we want you to be the face of the company. And this was a life-changing experience for me. I think this is one of the things that people need to realize is that you don't realize how much when you give somebody a chance at something. Take coffee with somebody, have a meeting, have them on your podcast. Like, you don't know what's going to come out of that when you got 2 people that are like really on that path. Mm-hmm. Because if you stay on that path, then everybody knows that path. But when you get 2 people like you and I together, just even this moment, who are on different paths, the things that could happen are just endless. And so literally I get into this thing. I didn't even know what the Inc. 5000 was at that point. I was like, cool, a conference. I show up at this conference in 2011. And these guys and girls are talking about all these big business things. This guy, Gary Vaynerchuk, wrote a book. This old guy named Grant Cardone is talking about real estate.
Oh, wow.
Like literally, like I'm watching this big behemoth of a human talk about all this mindset stuff named Tony Robbins. Like all these people are literally like, that was when they were starting to surge. Mm-hmm. And I'm literally just like taking notes, and I'm just hearing all these words around growth mindset and self-care and mindfulness and, lifestyle by design stuff, all for the first time. And just like, it just blew my mind wide open.
What an incredible accident.
I mean, was it like really an accident? But like, and ultimately, here's the thing is like, I would go back home to my then wife, who's really like one of my best friends now, mm-hmm. And explain all these things to her. And she'd be like, this is not anything I want anything to do with. And it was this beautiful accident that happened where, here we are years and years later from that, and we're the best of friends. We raise children together. We align on all those things very consciously. And it was one of the best things in the world that ever could happen, was her not wanting to go that way, because it drove me further into that direction.
Wow. That's intense. You're talking about your wife, right? You go to this conference, you get introduced to all this stuff, and your partner that's supposed to be forever is like, no.
Right.
What did that feel like?
Well, at the time, it hurts, mm-hmm. right? And I think that's a big thing, is the world of entrepreneurship is full of pain. Because once you take away the cubicle, the logo, the working hours, the HR manual, the SOPs, the company happy hour, like you are fully selling. I don't care if it's a product or a service. You are selling yourself every single day. You are looking to be witnessed. You're looking to be validated that you made the right choices. You are looking for other people to understand your pain and thrive with you. And you're looking for someone to celebrate the wins with. And it's brutal. And it was painful through the time. And it was like when I launched my first business as a result of that, right after that, and had an excellent opportunity to build a business and generate a bunch of revenue, and then literally crashed the first business in 6 months. Like fully, the business just fell over on itself. And I was like, oof, this is hard.
This is hard.
I did $1 million in contracts in 45 days. And clients were paying us $15,000 a month on a retainer. And then 6 months later, toppled the whole business because I still had some stuff in business that I fully didn't understand how it worked. Mm-hmm. And then be like, I don't think I could do this. And then be like, no, I can do this. And then starting the next business after that, and the next one after that. And so now when I talk to people and they're like, I don't think I can do this. Like, I only know that they can do this because I've sucked more wind and failed harder than you have. And if I could do this, then I know that we need to give you some tools and some systems, but like, you can do this.
Yeah, one thing I bring up, I brought it up on other episodes in my shorts and stuff, is sitting at the right table. And before that conference, you were at the right table for you. You go into this conference, you're introduced to new ideas, new mindset, new just, they peeled the layer back and showed you a different world, right? Like, so your circle from your wife to your friend group all had to change, didn't it? Mm-hmm. What did that look like?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that social media has done that's really interesting is we've dumbed down the quotes, and you get away from like really like, no, that's really a thing, right? Like the proximity to people that you have and the environment that you're in are the two most compelling ways to make change, right? And so, or like iron sharpens iron is a classic one, right? Because you're like, yeah, in my head, that makes sense. But what people don't realize is if you're the iron and the people that are around you are not sharpening you, they're dulling you every single day. And the way that the human mind is built is we can't create something that we haven't seen. There is nobody creating anything that goes, this has never been done before. Maybe it's never been done in this industry. Maybe it's never been done in this category, but nobody's coming up with the 7th, 8th, or 9th, or 10th dimension because they have no example of it. So the people that you surround yourself with, you know, whether it's in a mastermind environment or even the places where your hobbies go, you know, or just to be sitting around tables, we all need to be emulating some kind of thing. It's the only way it works.
So how did that work for you going through that time? It had to be trying, right?
Well,
how did you take it? How did you respond? And obviously we see the end response, or not the end response as this is the final product.
Right.
But we see the aftermath 13 years later, right? Going through those 13 years, you had to fall. Like you said, you crumbled a business in 6 months after signing how much, 100 million?
Well, so the traction there was like 2011, got the bug, right? I think we all, at some point, something happens and we get the entrepreneur bug, the virus. And then it's like, I can't go back to doing it that way. And so I built a company. We did $1 million in sales in the first 45 days. 6 months later, I crashed the business into the ground completely. And then out of that business, there was actually a small data product that we had created that I ended up selling. I was like, wait a minute, in this mess of things, there must be something of value. And so we built this data product, and I actually sold it to a company, bought it from me for intellectual property. And I was like, wait, people buy stuff like that? I didn't even know that was a thing, but it was a thing. And then the company was a digital marketing agency, and the premise of it was that we could actually get you clients better, faster, quicker if we took your existing lead list or database and took information off of the internet, combined those two things together, we could actually get you to a customer faster than the way your mind thinks about it. And so at that point, 13, 14, early artificial intelligence things were coming out. Chatbots were starting to become a thing.
Right.
Cybersecurity was becoming a thing. And a bunch of other kind of this next generation technology stuff was happening. And so I became really interested in this because I was like, if I could always stay on the curve of the business world, then I will always be ahead of everybody else. That was kind of the way I thought about it. And so I was like, I'm going to learn everything I can about AI. This is 2013, 14. And I had done some techie stuff like that. But long story short, basically saw this opportunity and I was like, I think I'm going to start doing cybersecurity stuff. And so started doing cybersecurity stuff, and lifestyle by design, right? I looked at cybersecurity guys and I was like, wait a minute, all these cybersecurity people have sleeve tattoos and beards. And I was like, that's going to be my into this. Grew my beard out, started getting sleeve tattoos.
Luscious beard, by the way. I love it. If you're not watching on YouTube right now or Spotify or anything, go check his beard out. It's magnificent.
And so then I really subscribe to this idea of a lifestyle by design. If you want something, you can emulate some of the behavior and it will lead you to getting further along.
Can I pause you right there real quick? Sorry for interrupting. I don't typically do this, but you're saying a life by design, and we as entrepreneurs should know that if we don't. But there's a lot of listeners out there that aren't into the entrepreneurial space, right?
Yep.
So how can you define a life by design for somebody that maybe has a W-2 that wants to stay there? They have the security, they have a family to support. They're like, hey, this is how I'm going to operate. What would you suggest to them on introducing the life by design and what that really means?
Yeah, I'm glad you slowed me down for that, because the first time I heard it, I was like, WTF? What?
Yeah, what's that?
So lifestyle by design, there's a few folks out there that like it's their thing, so I want to give them just credit. There's Jack Daly, who is probably one of the OG coaches. I think he's been a coach for 40 years, and several other folks. Chris Kaplan talks a lot about it, a couple other folks too. But this idea is like really sitting down and being like, if you grew up in a certain household with a certain culture, with a certain standard, the standard is that if you grew up in a family of, I don't know, construction workers, and you just decided that because your family was a family of construction workers, that was what you were going to be, and that's all you could do is live at that level of wealth, that level of health, that level of freedom, that level of travel, whatever it is, that is the cards you were dealt, and so therefore that is the path you were put on, and you should stay there. Like, and you see that when, you know, urban or inner city families, you see somebody trying to leave that environment and then being like, well, who do you think you are to be better than us? Mm-hmm. And so this term lifestyle design has evolved to be like, what is the lifestyle that you would really want to live? Like, if that wasn't your story and your identity wasn't tied to that type of lifestyle,
a secure lifestyle or a safe lifestyle for that family dynamic.
Correct. Right. I mean, like some people subscribe to, I want to work a 9 to 5. I want my 3 or 4 weeks of vacation off a year. I want to go to my all-inclusive resort where I know the drinks are going to be the same every time I go there. The food is going to be good. I'm going to know the person like that. You're all subscribing to that kind of lifestyle. And for a lot of people, that's great. And there's a lot of people out there that when they're at work, they're thinking about not being at work. When they're on vacation, they're thinking about not being a vacation. When they're with their relationship with their partner, when they're sitting on the couch and they're thinking about someone else. Ooh. And it's all those things that like I had built myself over the years to be like, I don't like any of this. None of this is the way I want my lifestyle to be designed. And so I consciously became this cybersecurity person. And just to go back to your thought, ended up running a bunch of different cybersecurity companies, and then built a cybersecurity company, and we raised $100 million over 3 years. So 5,000 square foot house, horses in the backyard, German shepherds in the front yard. Like, on paper, you couldn't have asked for a better experience. And was traveling all over the world, speaking on big stages. And in fall 2019, stood on top of the balcony at the Lowe's Hotel in South Beach, climbed up on the balcony, kicked off my shoes because I didn't want to mess up with my shoes, and had a suicide attempt. And sat there philosophically and did inventory in my head and was like, not a reason to stay, not a reason to stay, not a reason to stay, not a reason to stay. 4 o'clock in the morning, I was halfway through a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle, and really sat there for a minute and took my deep breath and was ready to jump. And just as I was about to jump, this little old Cuban janitor down there just started sweeping right underneath me. And I had this, I call it a divine moment, where I was like, I don't want to ruin that guy's life.
Wow.
And I got back down and I was like, this is not the life that I want at all. I want to design and a couple days later, I said, I want to design what I want in the way that I want it. And I want to take the action steps that I need to take in order to do that. And so now fast forward, 2024, I'm in a loving relationship, how we met through my partner, Alexis. She lives in California. I live in New York. And every 10 days, I come out here for 10 days because that's the type of lifestyle that I want to live. I've got 3 children. My one daughter plays high school baseball and will probably get a college scholarship to a university because of it. My 21-year-old son lives in Iowa with his loving girlfriend. He just got engaged. And my 13-year-old daughter is here in California with me, and she's my little mini me who comes wherever I go. And we change people's lives.
Man, what an incredible opportunity right there when you're sitting on a ledge. You have the world, what everybody would consider happiness, and you weren't. Nobody sits up on a ledge and kicks their shoes off and denies everything, say that's not reason to live. That person down there, their divine intervention.
Yeah.
Man, what does happiness mean for you today?
I love that question. I talk about now when people say like I'm stuck, I don't know what I want, like all the things that we all conjure up in our mind. What I have found is you got to find 4 cornerstones that you can when shit just doesn't feel good and it's hard and all those emotions that go through all of our heads, you got to be able to go back to somewhere. Like you have to. So you got to go back somewhere, and then you got to be able to go look forward to what you might want to call it a goal or a mission statement or purpose, whatever. But you got to have those 2 things. And for me, what I've realized is my happiness is one, I got to have freedom of my time. I won't let anybody control my time. The minute you try and control my time, you're an enemy to me. 2, money won't make you happy, but it'll make your problems a lot better. And so focusing on wealth as a utilitarian utility and a resource is super important, because you can make, for $10,000 in your pocket, you can make 90% of your problems go away. So not focusing there is just ignorant. My 3rd cornerstone is I found a lot of faith. Having faith in things really changed my life. And number 4, which was the hard one for me, the hardest one, because I didn't grow up with a father active in my life to not think about it, but now I do with my children, is really think about the legacy that you want to leave behind in your children and the things you got to teach them.
Imagine if you jumped.
Totally. I would have ruined everyone.
Right.
I would have ruined people's lives.
I'm so grateful you didn't, man. I'm so grateful. Not just for you, but for everybody in your world.
Totally.
Life gets tough, dude. It'll smack you in the face, and then while you're down, it'll kick you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And in the military, I'm sure when you were in the Marines, I know we learned this in the Army, it's not how the tennis ball drops and hits the ground. It's the resiliency coming back up.
Yep.
From your lowest moment right there. I'd imagine that's probably the lowest.
Yeah, for sure.
Where you're ready to throw it all away. Right? Your bounce back has been incredible.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, I think people in the entrepreneur world, especially, you can't train for that, right? Like you can't train the recovery. And I think you can give people, like, if you break that down for a second, if you look at why successful people who come from successful families and circumstances are successful, right? People don't talk about that a lot, but I've looked a lot at that back from my hedge fund days of like, why did they have this and I don't? Mm-hmm. It's all tools and systems. Like if you were born into a rich family and you have that family dynamic, and you went to a private school and you went to another private school and you were taught in 8th grade that networking and community is important, and you went to a private, and you just keep on building on that. Of course, by the time you're 25 and 26 and want to build a business, you have so much more tools and systems than a kid who grew up in a single home and was questioning where breakfast was coming from some mornings.
Who's taking me to school, or
right.
am I walking? Right. Who's going to be home? Is there going to be anybody home? Are the lights going to be on?
Right.
You know, I had my friend Jake on just a few weeks ago, and he was talking about his lifestyle, right? Completely different,
Right.
from a lot of people.
Now, the flip side of that, though, is what I find is interesting is now, like, I'm coaching, CEOs of multi-million-dollar companies. I'm coaching somebody who's building a $4 billion private equity fund right now. I'm coaching Fortune 500 executives. I'm coaching coaches. I'm coaching couples that just want to live a happy life. And the spectrum of that, though, is that there is the flip side of that, which is the person who has the underdog story, right? Who can allow for suffering to happen, who has resilience and can practice being able to constantly move through the storm or whatever you want to call it. And that's that point about if you look at the more successful people, I mean, you look at some of these amazing entrepreneurs that are out there. It's like they came from nothing and they were okay with that, and they actively chose to do something different with it. I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk's a really, really good example because his parents are immigrants and their liquor shop was doing really, really well. And he was like, this isn't good enough for me. Right? I can't do this. And even Grant Cardone's another great example where some people will not like his marketing tactics, but if you look at his the background of his story, he says, I was a douchebag for a long time. I was a shitty business person. And then it was him losing everything. And then his wife, I think then girlfriend, being like, if you don't get your shit together, I'm gone.
Right.
And now he's like, I want to be wealthy because I want to fly my daughters with me everywhere I go.
Yeah. She's on his podcast now. His
Yeah.
little daughter is talking about this stuff.
Right?
It's really awesome to see that because these guys and gals come from maybe nothing and build it, they hold on to that a little tighter. I think I see this in the older generation of immigrants as well, right? I have friends that their parents came here illegally, right? And built something. Now their son or daughter is doing things, moving mountains and helping people. It's incredible to see. Yes, these people that are born into more affluent families may have initial greater opportunity, right? But if you you back a dog into a corner, it's going to fight.
Right. Well, you bring up an interesting topic that I think I'm excited about. So, I've been working with early days artificial intelligence stuff since 2011, right? And a lot of the stuff that's even available now with ChatGPT and some of the other things, it's cool, but it's been around for a while. It's just now becoming mainstream. And so if you look at that, though, I think that we're about on the cusp of the underdog and the resourceful people who have much better soft skills being very, very valuable. Because I've worked with a company now that their AI is looking to remove the CEO out of big companies because they're like, why would we pay someone $10 million to make poor decisions when we could pay an AI thing $1 million a year to make much better decisions than most CEOs can? That person went to the schools, the private schools and everything else, and has the pedigree in order to be there. But the pedigree is the path. Where most AI people are focusing right now is the path. How do we take the path away from people? So lawyers are about to get turned upside down. Insurance companies are going to get turned upside down. Accounting firms, all the kind of structured transactional stuff. There's going to be really, really good use cases to be like, why don't we have an AI thing do it better, quicker, faster, more efficiently? Then enters the underdog and the resilience person who has already been through the suffering part, knows what it's like to fail, knows what it's like to get up over and over again. And those are the people that I think that very, very quickly, the network is really going to become the net worth of everybody very, very quickly. And I know it's a cliche phrase, but to your point around proximity and environment, and mastermind and put yourself around the right people, those are the people that are going hey, my business is not making the money I was making 3 months ago. What are you guys doing? And being able to shift that, okay, let's go over here. And having that muscle is going to be critical over the next couple of years.
Oh, I could only imagine, man. And that's not putting fear into people's hearts like, hey, this is coming down the pipeline,
Right.
whether you like it or not. So who do you need to have in your circle? What table do you need to sit at? Man? Sit at the right table. And if you're at the wrong table, I say it all the time, get up, push your chair in, go sit at another table where people want to see you thrive. You talked about, that safe path. When I came over into real estate, I didn't tell my adopted dad for 6 months. I told my adopted mom, told my brother, I said, don't tell dad. Because I came from the electrical world. And he's like, I was making really good money working in the Bay Area. And as soon as I let the cat out of the bag, 6 months, 7 months in, my dad was like, as soon as COVID's over, you need to get your ass back in there and start pulling wire. But he was in the he's a correctional officer for 20 years. He had his security. He's you need to have a steady paycheck. There's no way I'm going to let my son fail. And it was out of love. And I was like, Dad, I've been doing this and I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good. And I'm unemployable now. You know what I mean?
I love
totally
that.
Unemployable. Which is a great place to be.
Yeah.
Like I have an asset and the network is part of the asset.
Totally. 100%.
And I know friends from high school, from the military, just from the electrical field, right? That they're like, I can't do anything else. My truth says that they could. My truth does.
For sure.
And maybe they just don't see it, right? That's why I started the podcast. Introduce people to a new way of thinking, a new life, right? Those Grant Cardones, the Tony Robbins, the Garys, right? The Gary V's. They're on the top of Mount Whitney. You know what I mean? They're way up here. And I'm a little trail right down the road that you can communicate with, that you can talk with. We can march this path together. Let's go.
Well, it's interesting. So one thing that experience I've had that brought me to some of this kind of thought process is when I was at Morgan Stanley, the investment bank, my job was to understand different jobs in Morgan Stanley and understand what we could outsource to somewhere else. And so we would do these studies on people and roles and designations. And Morgan Stanley at that point had 70,000 employees globally, I think. You're talking about one of the big 4 banks on the planet, right? And millions and millions of dollars of transactions every single day, going through this thing. And so my job there was to look at roles and break it down into a process and then be like, which stuff could be done by a machine, what could be outsourced to somewhere overseas, and what stuff had to be kept in the United States. And we were studying, we did a 6-month study there over executive assistants to vice presidents. So the company had a couple thousand executive assistants who all of them made about $150,000 as their base salary. And with their commissions or bonuses and tenure and benefits, it was a $250,000 employee. So thousands of them. So tens of millions of dollars over this executive assistant who supported this vice president of the company, right? Most of them we found were there for 16 or 17 years. And so we did this big study to be like, how long does it take you to master the role? And then at what point does your skill set and expertise actually get better? And at what point does your brain start to get numb? And so what we found is that like by year 5, that person when that person is making $80,000, they had in this role, they had mastered the job. You actually could not get any better at your job other than the fact of doing it over and over.
5 years comes to about 10,000 hours.
Right. 10,000 hours, right? Like Malcolm Gladwell. And then that person would get a bonus or a salary increase to keep them. But that's 16, 17, 18 years later, that person was now making double or triple what their worth was to the organization. And so we systematically figured out ways to change that in that scenario. But that's the thing is like, what you don't realize is the way that the system is built in the electrician example is at what point does mastery, right? Because especially in blue collar, HVAC people, electricians, plumbers, they become masters, right? But they max out on like really like how much money you could make because you're trading time for money constantly. And then you're going to get kind of numb in your own self-development because if you're working a 30-hour week and you're doing things that don't interest you or intrigue you 30 hours of the week, you're just numbing yourself. So at some point, like the term for me in 2020, I started thinking about really like, I like the idea of self-mastery. Like I want to master things, and then I want to be paid for mastering those things, and then I want to move on and learn other stuff. And so my life has become this kind of lifestyle of adding value in ways to people to help them with the systems and the tools and the goal setting and the blueprints to get there, but then constantly being in this modality of like, what can I learn next so that I can constantly be helping other people behind me, because I recognize what that path to be on is like.
That's wonderful, man. What do you think the biggest value you've been able to give people?
Ooh, I like this question. Ironically, I think it's permission. I think a lot of people like just need permission. Like what your example is fantastic. Like you were seeking at a very finite level permission to go forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big thing that everybody wants to be accepted. Everybody wants to be bought into. And so I think I give people permission to move on more than anything. And then I give them systems and tools, because a lot of people who didn't grow up in that premium environment think they need to do it on their own. They think they have to learn everything, and then that slows them down, and then they burn out on it, and then they question whether or not they're doing it the right way, and they might turn back and go back to work again.
We see that a lot in the real estate world. You think you have to know every nuance to real estate.
Yeah.
And the main thing is they talk about your 3 pillars of lead generation. What are they? That's only 3. There's hundreds of ways to lead generate. What do you like doing? First, it's what do you like doing? That's the number one thing, because you want to be able to get up. If it's open houses, you love it. You freaking love it, and that's what you do, right? Then you figure out your calling strategy and your marketing campaigns, or whatever you do for your lead gen model. Some people, they just make their network through divorce attorneys, because they're really good at handling divorce scenarios. They've done it, and that's their niche, right? Open houses, your database. I know people that won't call people in their phone because they're scared to get turned away by friends. They don't have the permission to call them.
Yep.
Right? Or they feel that they don't. So they'll do cold calling at a high level. They're like, I don't know this person, so if they yell at me or tell me to F off, right, I'm good with it. And I started out that way. I didn't want to call my people. I didn't want to feel like a hindrance. So mine was open houses and cold calling, right? But like you said, there's so many different ways to go in the entrepreneurial world. What is it that you like, or you think you're passionate at this point, that you have purpose behind? Okay, move in that direction. Then you'll find you don't like it, or that's not really what you're into. You're introduced to something new because you're already in this world. Now you find another path. Whether you failed or just said, hey, that's not good for me, I'm going to go over here, right? Like, I love that.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. I think it's good because I've always been fascinated with the real estate market since Cushman and Wakefield, because, again, I had these examples of people who were just like, they were, some of the brokers that I used to interact with were basically institutions to New York City. Like they were there, 40 years, and they had sold the same building 10 times. So the likelihood of them not being the broker in that building was no, right? Like
they are the broker.
They are the building.
Yep.
Like that's and so that became this like almost like Buddhist approach to like, no matter what the buyer said, the seller said, they'd be like, that's not how we do that here, and over the past several years, the residential real estate market, what I think is interesting, because I coach a bunch of real estate brokers, is when the market is good, everybody's posting online, my dog, and another one sold, and another happy household, and everyone's like up in the air. And then the minute the market adjusts, everyone's freaking out.
Head in the sand.
And in both those examples, going back to what I said, it's like they cannot control the outcome. You have no control of the outcome. You have control over the behavior that leads to that outcome, sure, but you have no control over that. And And I think it's interesting because anybody I've ever met that's really good at real estate, they understand their strength really well, and they stay there. And there's this weird thing that people should think about who are listening to this, where there's a weird reward system that people will adopt in sucking at something, because then you have to make yourself feel better in some way, shape, or form. And so there's like this suffering reward that goes on to be like, I'm not good at cold calling. So what am I going to do? I'm going to keep on trying to get good at that thing, because then I got to feel better about myself. And the minute someone picks up the phone, 20 phone calls later, oh my God, it worked. And you get this, like, you're like a rat in a maze who gets a little breadcrumb. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, I might as well keep on doing this until I master it. Instead of, most people are going to have strengths, and yet they're going to avoid focusing on them.
They're going to avoid the strength zone because they're nervous. They don't have the permission, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We see that all the time.
Yeah.
Right? How are you in your relationships? I'm great. So why don't you call the people you know?
Yep.
See that so often.
Yeah.
So often. Everybody loves me. I'm the life of the party. Everybody invites me to their party, or everybody likes hanging out with me, whatever it is. And you never call them.
Yep.
Oh.
One of the most foundational things that one of my mentors ever taught me about sales was always chase the no. It'll get you to the yes faster. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that makes no sense. And he was like, yeah, try it. And I was like, 2 weeks later, I was like, oh.
How many no's does it take to yes? Is it 20? Is it 30? Is it 50? So get to 50 no's as fast as you can.
Yep.
As fast as you can. Right?
Also, like the no's oftentimes will be like, no, I'm not it, but I know somebody. Right? So chasing the no and like kind of rewiring the way, like, I'm actually looking for you to say no.
Rewarding the no by continually doing it. Like put the reward sign over the no instead of over the yes.
Yeah.
Right? It's just tricking the mindset around what's positive.
Yeah.
If you make that no a positive because you know you're closer to that yes, it's easier to do.
Yep. Yeah. It's been a fantastic experience. And now I think it just, like, again, the permission thing of like giving people permission to edit themselves. I actually like the term edit, and I look at it as like, you know, it's a little bit cliche, but I do look at it as like people are writing their kind of own book, mm-hmm. and there's these chapters along the way, and you can't change the past, but like you sure can make edits going forward. And then it's not so much about like, I was wrong, I made a bad choice, a good choice, but like you can edit yourself along the way. And it sounds like you've done some of that yourself.
Well, God is good. God is good. That's all glory to him, man. That's how I'm still here. You know, something that popped in my head while you're talking about the edits. Comedians, before they do their hour-long setup on Netflix or YouTube or whatever it is, they write their jokes. They get their hour of material. They go around and tour and figure it out. Okay, what do I need to change here? Where's the punchline going to fall? Who's the crowd and all this stuff? And they're at that 90, 95% fail rate. They'll bomb more times than not.
Yep.
Right? And the same thing with our life as you're writing the book, or you can even say writing an email. How many times do you have to backspace, retype,
sure,
right? Or click, I misspelled opportunities. I put 1P, whatever it is, right? Like just minor edits. And in your life by design, you just look back where you're at. Say you're 30 years old. Are you where you want to be exactly right now? If the answer is yes, great. What's next?
Yep.
If it's not, which it's probably not, what happened in the last 5 years? What happened in the last 10 years? Where'd you stop? Mm-hmm. Right? Because as Ed Milet tells the story, right, when he meets that older guy and it's his son's 6th birthday or whatever it is, he's like, hey, pay attention because he's only going to be 6 months. How many times have you been 25 or 26 or 35 or 40? How many times are you living the same year over and over?
Right.
That's where we find these edits and say, what am I doing? Am I being complacent? And the answer is probably yes.
Yep.
I live in that world too. I know when I get complacent. I'm like, okay, what words am I saying to myself right now? Because I'm continuing down this path for a week or two. How am I talking to myself? What words do I need to rephrase, and how do I move forward in the next direction?
Yep.
Right.
Well, and I think you're spot on there. And I think like tactically 2018 and 2019 for me, I'd done, I don't know, 10 Tony Robbins events, Joe Dispenza events, done plant medicine stuff. And then 2020 was this fun, interesting, weird year for everybody. But 2020, I got to the end of it and I said, all right, this year we're making goals. And travel goals, financial goals, relationship goals, goals with my kids. Showed my kids how to make goals for the first time and said, these are the things we're going to achieve this year. I used Jesse Itzler's big ass calendar was what I used for it. So literally mapping out the whole year in advance. 2021, same exact thing. Okay, we have systems and tools in place now. All right. Increase the goal by 20% financially. Change the relationship goal because that didn't work. Figure out this piece, figure out this piece, figure out this piece. 2023, same exact thing. Decided last year or year before last that I was going to do Ironman last year. Did 3 Ironman last year. Competed in 4, finished 3. Decided I was only going to work 25 hours a week because I had to train for freaking Ironman the whole entire time. So only worked 25 hours a week. Showed my daughter how to work 25 hours a week. Showed her my accounting. Let her see how much my hourly rate is in order for me to make 25 hours a week so I could give her permission to seek more, even though she's 13, right? Then got to the end of that year and was like, all right, now I'm in a place where I got to think about relationship. And I was like, wow, nobody ever puts in their dating profile that what they're looking for is joy and kindness. And meanwhile, that's all you really want, right? And so ultimately focused last year on like, how do I bring the right relationship into place and keep the family thing going with my kids, keep this going, keep this going, keep this going in this way. And then ultimately made that happen last year. And that led to you and I being here today, right? And then same thing, got to 2024 and said, okay, here's the plan for this year. And we're currently on track for that for this year. And then we'll get to the end of this year and be like, all right, what do we want to get better, different, whatever.
That's incredible. When do you, I know a lot of people listening don't live like that. They don't understand what the big ass calendar is or how to plan it. When do you plan? It's 2024 now.
Yep.
When do you plan for 2025?
So I have learned that I like to plan early because I think if you feel like, I'll say it like this. If you feel like you have all the systems and tools in place, right? You can make a plan right away, right? It's like IKEA furniture, right? It comes in the box, you open it up, the little weird dude with the weird tool thing, step by step shows you, but you have all the tools, you have the instructions, and you can just do it. I think the hard part is that everyone thinks that they can have the clarity and the vision and just execute. And then when you start to execute, you realize you probably don't have the right tools in place and systems. So what I do is I plan in November. And then I use December as my proving ground because I'm going to slow down on work. Everybody's in holiday mode. So like if I wanted to put on 10 pounds of muscle the following year, I'm starting to go to the gym December 1st because January 1st, I'm going to figure out that I wasn't sleeping enough, wasn't drinking enough water, wasn't eating enough protein, whatever those things are. And so December I start, so October, November-ish, I start to think about it. I'm starting to do my reflection, and I become really introspective. I use a blueprint PDF thing for business and for personal life. So I go, all right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how's my relationship right now? All right, 7, 8, 9. All right, how's my relationship with my children? How's my financial goals? How's my personal goals? And I score myself very independently. And then I give it to my coach. And then my coach goes, all right, you said this is an 8. Why is it an 8? And what would it be like to get you to a 10? And then I have to have this honest moment with myself and have a third party come in and say like, well, what would make it a 10? And then that is how I identify the goal for that year because I want to get to a 10. And then I go, what tools and systems do I need in place in order to make that happen? And that's where that like little triangle of like self-doubt, fear, scarcity, comes up, because then you've got to be like, am I focused on the right thing? And do I have the right tools to do it? And I mean, to go back to the IKEA example, if IKEA furniture showed up with no instructions, no tools, we would just be dumping it in the garbage all the time. Be like, fuck this.
Right. What is this thing? Like, I don't even know where to start. Yeah. Where's the legs for this chair? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But you give yourself permission around accountability.
Yep.
And to go back and edit. And you're tracking that. I think a lot of people get into the complacency world where, hey, things are smooth right now until they get punched in the face. And being accountable, willing to make the edits. So when that punch in the face does happen, you already know what part it dropped off at. Why did it do that? Well, I said I was going to do this. I didn't. And here was my reward.
Yep. Well, here's an interesting way to look at it. I think people misunderstand the world of coaching because I think there's obviously some smoke and mirrors to it. It's a weird, diluted industry. There's promises made that sometimes are a little bit harder than people imply. But I have a very, very good friend who is the defense and strength coordinator for a tier 1 football school. And his job is to evaluate incoming potential scholarships. And they take people through a 6-week program, and they have like a 96 or 97 percentile rate that if they give you a score of yes, you will excel at that team. They take you through this rigorous coaching thing in 6 weeks. And at the end of it, regardless of how tall you are, how strong you are, how fast you are, they will say yes or no to the head coach. And the head coach impeccably goes, all right, they said no, and just moves on. There's never been a time where they have doubted this program. And I've spent a lot of time with that team to understand what the mechanics are of that. And so what happens is when people come in and say they want coaching, sometimes they want consulting. They want to be told what to do, right? Being told what to do is consulting. Coaching is being aligned on a goal, right? So no receiver or baseball pitcher or catcher is going to show up to training camp day 1 and say, this is my goal. Tell me how to get there. They're not going to do that, right? And then on the days that they don't want to show up, they're just not going to show up, right? So when you show up to a training camp, there is the coach will ask you, like, what's the goal here? I want to play in the NFL. I want to make millions of dollars. I want to have a legacy for my family. I want to come from poor into riches. I want to retire in 10 years and I don't want to think about money ever again or whatever the thing is. And he goes, great, work out. And they work out, they do the training. He goes, you got to put on 10 pounds. You got to lose 10 pounds. I need you to run 10 seconds off the half. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Go to the gym, go eat this. Don't eat that. Don't do this. Don't do anything stupid. And then he has a bad game. What's the goal? Great. Get in the gym, lose the 10 pounds, run faster, Now in professional sports, they have an off season so they can get better.
Right.
Entrepreneurs, we don't have an off season. So we have to, I think if people, as someone who has multiple coaches, I get frustrated with my coach. I got my ass handed to me by one of my coaches the other day to the point where I was at dinner with Alexis and she was like, you're not here. And I was like, nope. And I'm not going to be here for the next 45 minutes. I'm going to eat with you because I have to, but like, I'm not. I got my ass handed to me by my coach and that's what I needed to hear right now. And she was like, all right, let's eat.
I think I have one of those coming up today. I started new coaching with Tom Ferry.
Okay.
And I had some things I had to do over the last 2 weeks, and it was 4th of July and all that. And I was up last night and early this morning, and I was like, I'm not even locked in. So
yeah, but you have the coach.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like that's the thing is like people who really want to move better, faster, quicker, more efficiently, cheaper, shorter sales cycle, whatever it is. If you really don't have a coach, you're missing an opportunity. And transparently, when I got my first coach, early 2019, 4 sessions in, I fired the coach. Got a second coach, 4 or 5 sessions in, fired the coach. Mm-hmm. And it was my third coach that I was like, oh, now I get this. And I think that's the hard part.
It is. My first coach through MAPS, great guy. Loved him. I'm not going to drop his name. But loved him. I thought he was awesome. I was going through more transformational stuff. I needed to get out of my own head, my own self-worth, my self-doubt. All these things were really, really ingrained. 30 years of not feeling good, not having great relationships with my parents, not feeling confident in myself. I had this false bravado, which I found I was just using that to front so people didn't have to know me, right? Everybody, I was friends with everybody, but I wasn't friends with myself. So actually I wasn't a friend to anybody. I wasn't even kind to myself. I did that for a year. I was like stumbling on why isn't the real estate moving forward? And then finally, after 12 months, I was like, hey man, I gotta go experience a different coach.
Yeah.
I got a different coach. Things start moving forward this way. But I have 4 different coaches right now.
Yep.
Right? 4 different ones. One is predominantly real estate. Another one is real estate and, internal transformational coaching.
Yeah.
I have a 411 coach, right? And then I have, through Brendan Bouchard's program.
Nice.
I have another one. I did a 16-week thing like, hey, let's break down what I'm doing that's very internal, right? I have these goals and these ambitions, this podcast, my book, and I know real estate sales is the way I'm going to get to that next endeavor, right? Not so much a stepping stone, but a vessel. I used to think things were just stepping stones. The military was a stepping stone. The electrical thing was a stepping stone, right? They're stepping stones. No, real estate's a vessel. That's how I'm going to move the needle forward. That's the way I'm going, right?
Yep.
And it took coaching to realize, hey, buddy, I know where you want to go. You're not going to go anywhere unless you have a tool that can get you there.
Yep.
Right. And so I think people, if you're an entrepreneur or you're thinking about it, go sit at the right table, get with somebody that's going to mentor you or coach you or walk you through and get you to that next step. Right. If you can afford a takeout dinner, you can afford to find a coach.
Totally.
Because you're only going to get so many of those takeout dinners, right? Why aren't you just investing in yourself? You're the only person that loves you the way you do. You're the only person who can, other than God.
And I think it's worth like learning. Like you bring up an interesting point around like self-worth, right? Like I actually would challenge people that if you can adopt the awareness to it, there's coaches out there you could get for $50 an hour. I think it'd be great if you can pay attention to it, to like pay for a $50 an hour coach and then be like, I need better than this.
Right.
Right. Like
so $200 a month. You see them one time a week for a half hour or whatever it is, whatever that structure is.
And if you were like, I've already got this. All right. Then go pay for the $100 an hour coach and then literally be like, I've already got this. Like you could totally figure out like at what level you probably need to be operating at just by going through to like, I need more than this.
Dude, I'm a few $1,000s a month in coaching.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
So at the end of the year, I'm going to look at a $50,000 bill, $45,000 bill, and I'm going to know how much it's earned me. Where would I be if I didn't have those people that are lifting the veil, turning the kaleidoscope, I like to say, like, what's the different prism? Why is it blurry? Why is it doing this? Oh, let me get my focus in, right?
Yep.
Let me change the prisms that I'm seeing. Let me lock in and really define it. That's why I love what you do, right? You give people that permission. They're seeking that little pat on the butt. Hey, you're good. You're good. Just go out there.
Just try it.
Yeah. Jump in. The water's fine. It's not going to kill you. It might hurt. It might hurt. You might jump into the shallow end once or twice, but hey, don't worry. You'll get off that diving board later on, right?
Yeah. And again, the permission thing is wild. Like I just recently was coaching somebody and they have a side hustle thing, business thing that they think could be huge. And they were like, oh, I got to get insurance and I got to start an LLC and I got to do this. And I was like, no, you don't. I was like, what's your deal size? And they were like, oh, for this service, I would charge $1,000. I was like, well, by tax code, you can earn up to $10,000 a year before you have to claim it on your taxes. So that to me says you shouldn't be thinking about this problem until you've got 8 clients.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, really? And I was like, no, Google it, look it up. That's true. And he was like, oh. I was like, just get someone to pay you on Venmo $1,000. Sure, if it's over $8,000, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. But like, you get 8 clients that'll pay you $1,000 for a thing. Your belief system on what you're doing is going to change really quickly.
When you start seeing the money funneling in,
yeah.
Oh man, I can do this. And guess what? Out of those 8 people, you should get 16 referrals.
Right.
Because they know people, right? And if they swear by your product, if they trust you, they'll absolutely bring you more.
Yeah, I think the self-worth thing on money, the money story is really, really fascinating to people, because when I had this really, I'll tell you this one quick story, because I think it's really interesting how I think about money now, is I was working at that company that introduced me to the Inc. magazine thing, and I was probably making, I don't know, $85,000, $90,000 a year, bonus and commission and all that stuff. And no room for growth in the company. The company just wasn't set up for that. But I was doing all these cool things. And so I needed to figure out how to make more money. And so I started going on. At that point, WeWork was a big thing. Mm-hmm. And WeWork had these discussion boards. And so I started jumping into these discussion boards, and someone had said they were looking for somebody to do some consulting work. And long story short, that didn't work out, but I was like, there's a different model here. It's not always, now you have consultants, coaches, advisors. There's all these different ways to get paid to do the thing that you want to do and add the most value that you do. So I took my last job at a startup before I made the full leap into entrepreneurship and said I'm never working for anyone ever again. And the company was not working out, and I could see it. The parts were not moving right. I talked to the CEO about it. I was running sales for them. I said, this isn't going to work. There's just, the data suggests this isn't going to work. And I got to a conflict with him over this, because obviously he's invested. It's his company. It's got to work. That's a big thing for entrepreneurs also, is like, this is my thing. You have to do it. And I quit. And owned a house, had kids, all the things going, didn't have savings. And over the course of that weekend, I built a PowerPoint deck, 3 slides, maybe 4, on this digital marketing idea that I had. And on Sunday night, emailed it out to a bunch of friends and said, hey, if you know anybody, there's this interesting digital marketing thing I'm launching. I think it's really, really powerful. If you know anybody, I'd like to meet with people. And so someone on that Monday or Tuesday says, I know a guy. You're going to have to drive 4 hours to his office, but this would be the thing for you to do. And so I said yes. I drove the 4 hours. I probably had, no bullshit, like maybe $2,500 in my name, and had just quit my job. And resources were needed. And so I drove the 4 hours to the middle of nowhere, and this guy had a parking lot with like 2,000 school buses. And I was like, they don't even know this exists. Like, how does this even happen? And ultimately, I ended up having a couple different school bus clients out of this engagement, which was really fascinating as well. But you'd never think this was a business. But long story short, I pitched this story or this business idea to the founder of this company, and he was like, if you could do this, that would change the legacy of our business forever. And I said, great. He said, how much does it cost? And I said, well, it's $15,000 a month. And he was like, great, send me a contract. And I said, I can't. And he goes, why not? I go, well, my time is really valuable. I'm actually really, really busy right now. So unless you want to write me a check right now for $15,000, I couldn't possibly do this work for you for another 2 or 3 months. And he walked me down to the accounting department and had his accounting person write me a check for $15,000. And I filed the EIN, got insurance and a lawyer and an accounting out of that first check. And that was how my first business started.
Wow.
And I walked out of that meeting, envelope in hand, and cried and thought, wait, that's how money works? And from that moment forward, my own self-worth story has completely changed because I was like, it just flipped. And I didn't lie to anybody. I didn't cheat anybody. I fully laid out, this is where I am. And this is this, but I can't, my time is so valuable. I couldn't possibly even think about fixing your problem unless you're going to give me a reason that we're going to partner on something together.
Here you go.
And here you go.
That's awesome, brother. That's awesome. I love it, dude. I look forward to having you on again, man. But before we go here, what is one book that changed your life or something you recommend everybody read?
Ooh, I'll give you two. First one that comes up is if you're a parent, there's Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters. There's also a Strong Sons, Strong Fathers, but I read the Strong Daughters one because there's so much that men don't understand about raising girls that changed the way I thought about parenting as a whole, for sure. And then I think whatever you think you're really, really good at, go the opposite direction. Like if you think like Tim Grover is a jerk, read his book. You know, like you think Ed Milet is loud, go read his book. You think Tony Robbins is weird, go read that book because you'll get different perspective out of it.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I love it, man.
Yeah, man.
And what's one piece of advice you would give the world or anybody in the world today?
Ooh, change something. Try something different once a month. Like make it a requirement that you put yourself into a different environment with different people at least once a month. It'll open up other things.
Change something.
Change something.
I love it, man. Thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man. This is awesome. I love it.